Here's what I think is the biggest problem in the world. There are some problems, let's say in the racism realm, in which you can't fix them too well if you wait too long. That's true of problems in general, right? If you've got a small leak in your roof, the sooner you fix it, the less damage there will be. So it is true of things in general that the sooner you can get on them, it's quite common that that's the best time to fix them. And so in race relations in Black America, the soonest you can fix something is early school and childhood experience. If we fixed school such that everybody of every ethnicity has something like a good experience and they get brainwashed right, and I just like to use this one experience, be brainwashed to be polite to authority. They don't have to respect it, but you have to be polite, otherwise you get your ass kicked. So what happens if we fix school, and why haven't we? Why haven't we fixed schools? Well, one of the reasons is that we don't understand that cause and effect seems to matter. You know, that Republicans like to get rid of government regulation and red tape. Democrats are trying to get rid of the laws of physics. Right? The laws of physics say that every cause has a specific effect. So Republicans would say, well, yeah, every cause has an effect. So if you want a certain outcome, you have to act the way that that cause will create the outcome. Let's say, for example, not going to jail would cause you to have a better life. Staying off drugs would cause you to have a better life. Studying causes you to have a better life. So Republicans accept the laws of physics, that there is such a thing as incentive and cause and effect, but they don't like all the government regulations, the artificial stuff. So they accept the natural laws of the world, but not the unnatural stuff of government. Just a generalization. Democrats are literally railing against the laws of physics. They're actually railing against the laws of physics. Because the assumption that is below everything is that the way people act is not having that big of an influence on their outcomes. The Black Lives Matter frame is that the big variable is the unfair system. That's what Black Lives Matter needs you to believe, because their messaging requires that to be the biggest problem, so that's where you focus. Now, is it? How big is the problem of racism in, let's say, the average black person's life? How big is the problem of racism compared to, and we all acknowledge it's big, right? So I'm not saying it's small, I'm saying it's big. But how big is it compared to the impact of their own decisions? Which one of them is bigger? And in my worldview, it's 100 to 1. The things you do are 100 times more powerful than racism, which is also pretty darn big. Racism isn't small, it's big. But your actions are 100 times bigger. They're not even close. So it's like gravity. If you were to measure gravity, you'd say, well, gravity is pretty strong. I can't even get off the Earth. You need a lot of energy to get a rocket into space. So gravity is really strong. But actually, gravity is a super weak force if you look at it in a different way, if you were good at measuring things. So strategy matters. And let me say this. If we changed schools one of two ways, actually, let me make a more complete picture. As many of you have been prompting me in the comments, which I saw going by, the big problem for the black community is that the schools are bad. If you gave any kid a really strong first several years of education, the up through graduating high school, if you get that right, everything else is going to be a lot better, right? And the main thing that is preventing that from being right is a lack of competition. And the reason there's a lack of competition is because the school unions are very strong. And it's better if they don't have competition. It's better if they just negotiate to keep things uncompetitive, which is the current situation. Now, on top of that, there are a lot of schools. If there are a lot of schools, it means there are a lot of teachers. And there are a lot of people who are related to teachers and families of teachers. So because there are so many teachers, you have, quite naturally, a big union with a lot of power. And that's the problem. So institutional racism is, I would say, 95% the teachers' union. If you were going to make a chart and say, all right, here are all the elements of institutional racism. You've got your judicial system, you've got your economic system, hiring, firing. So you make the whole chart. I would say that 95% of the impact of a person's life would be the teachers' union. So that would be the one thing that destroys 95% of your life, and then all of the other things added together, including the judicial system, the justice system, the cops and everything else, all of it added together would maybe be 5%. So that 5%, still pretty big, right? If you had a 5% problem in your life, you would be bothered by it all the time. 5% is pretty big for a problem, right? But 95% is because you didn't get it right in the beginning with the first years of education, and that's all the teachers' union. Now, specifically, any situation that doesn't have competition is going to become a bad system. That's what the teachers' union does. They remove competition. So if you put that back, let's say that the coronavirus caused a resurgence in new business models for online education. I think that's going to happen. Suppose that instead of having every teacher who works today becoming just an online teacher, which would be the worst idea in the world, because you'd be taking teachers who are bad in person and videotaping them, which makes them even worse, basically. So that, of course, if you're going to online, the model you should end up with is that the best teachers in the world are something like best-selling class makers. In other words, there'll be teams of professionals the way that movies are made. They'll make a class, they'll sell it on Amazon or somewhere else, and they'll get $1 per student, but they'll make millions and millions just like a best-selling author would make. Now, in that world, how many teachers do you need? Not as many, right? If it's digital, then everybody who takes a 5th grade class might choose from, let's say, 20 different teachers who have been identified and reviewed as just the best teachers with the best class. So you might only need 20 good teachers for 5th grade American history. That's it. 20 teachers. So digital online education should decimate the number of teachers in the long run. This is not something that happens next year. But in the long run, which should make the teachers' union less important, which should introduce some kind of competition, which could be the biggest solution to institutional racism ever. But how do you get people to actually study and do online education? Well, not everybody has a screaming internet Wi-Fi and a brand new laptop. So I don't know that every kid can learn digitally. Plus there's a behavior issue. There's a lot to be worked out. But in the long run, I think there will be fewer teachers just because one teacher will handle millions, the best teacher. And that should break the hold that the teachers' unions have on the schools, which should be really helpful in getting rid of institutional racism. All right. And I think that also there should be introduced a strategy class, a life strategy class. I always talk about my book, How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big, but I talk about it as an example. Right? There are other books that tell you how to have a strategy for life that makes sense. Now, I want to do a better job of explaining why I say that companies, when they talk about strategy, it's just BS. But people need to have a strategy. All right? Here's I thought of a better way to explain this. In the business world, you wouldn't say it's a strategy to have an accounting system, right? You would just say, well, you just need an accounting system. That's not a strategy. That's sort of just basic stuff you need to be in business. Likewise, when I talk about strategies for people, when I say stuff like, build a talent stack, these things should be as basic as having an accounting system. In other words, calling these things life strategies is probably too much of a word. They're not really strategies. They're kind of like having an accounting system if you're a business. Basic stuff everybody should do. Now, if it's something that everybody should do, I'm not sure it's a strategy, right? So strategy might be a misleading word. Is there anybody who should not try to have multiple skills that work well together? No. There's nobody who should not have that strategy. Therefore, I'm not sure it's a strategy. It's more of just a baseline good thing to do.